take me down the corridor to secure my wrist with ties. I'll be chasing the outline of your body next to mine.
So welcome to episode 26 of Blowin' Wind with the Great Southern Brain Fart. It's amazing what you can find when just digging for new music. One day I was sitting up late listening to Hope Sandoval and I decided to click on the related artists link. As I perused through the list, I saw Marissa Nadler, and for some reason the name and the image just looked really interesting. So I clicked on it, and the first song I listened to was a song called Drive off of her 2014 release, July. From there, I became a huge fan, and I found myself completely immersed in Nadler's 14-year career. This year, she released one of my favorite albums of the year, and what I feel is her best album yet, For My Crimes. And I feel more than lucky to have Marissa on the show today to speak with her. So, Marissa, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me, and thanks for all the nice words.
Well, thank you for also not running scared from the blog name.
That's all right. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I've been persistent with you. I've been trying to get to you for a while.
I know. Well, you got me at the right time, and I know. Do you get that a lot? The name?
Believe it or not, sometimes some people are like, I don't know that I want to talk to this person. And then some people are like, that's really fucking cool. Yeah, I want to talk to you just to see what
it's
about.
On me. Yeah. I'm into it now.
So it's actually, just a quick story. It's actually a play on words from an old Pantera album called The Great Southern Trendkill. And a friend of mine in North Carolina used to call me the Great Southern Brain Fart just because I have this habit of spouting off absolutely useless musical information in like the most inappropriate times and whatnot, and so that kind of became my nickname. And when I decided to launch the blog, I was like, well, yeah, that doesn't sound like something that people would forget. So I think I'm going to go with that one, not thinking that there would be implications. So,
you know what? It's memorable for sure.
So yeah, it's still funny though. Every now and then I'll be at a show and I will hear someone yell "brain fart," and I'll just turn around and just wave. So it's and my
that's
wife,
your nickname, also, huh?
Yeah, it really is. It's like people think that's actually like my nickname or something. And my wife was like, I don't know. She's like, I don't know if I'd like being addressed as brain fart all the time. I was like,
she's just Mrs. Brain Fart.
That's what they call. They actually do call her Mrs. Brain Fart.
Oh no.
but she's okay with it. She's a very intelligent woman. So she's but she's learned to adjust. So right out the bat, I just wanted to kind of start in like kind of a sequential order. Was it, like I said, like when I first heard you last year, it was something that I've been a singer-songwriter for 25 years or so, and I have a very broad palette of musical taste. Obviously I listen to, I cover and I listen to a lot of hard rock and metal and psych rock and stuff, but I also play roots music and I play folk music. And so your music really kind of scratched that itch of, the music that I need to go to get away from everything when everything gets a little heavy. So when I stumbled upon the July, which is funny because it was the July album that kind of I hit first as opposed to the one that was more current, and then I worked my way backwards, and just from there I noticed that while you do have a formula of style, it never seems to get stagnant or old. It's like you just continue to grow on that. And is that something that you feel feel yourself as you're going from album to album?
Well, that's the goal, so I'm glad to hear that you think that. I definitely I try to keep getting better, like
Mm-hmm.
most people do at any pursuit. And I think that, yeah, I mean, I get bored really easily, so I'm kind of always trying to shake it up.
That's so funny because I'm kind of the same way when it comes to writing. You know, it's like I can listen back and feel like I've written the same over the years, but when I go back and listen, I go, oh, I can definitely hear, you know, significant changes and significant growth from album to album. So where you're at right now with For My Crimes, you just seem to be in this really cool place. Like you've carried on the kind of storytelling that you normally do, but there seems to be, you know, shall I say, almost it's hard to say. I'm trying to find the right words. Like a more accessible but dark, but still dark. If that makes any sense. Like it's like an accessible darkness as opposed to where some of your early albums might not have been as accessible to someone who just was hearing them and, you know, in the
Yeah.
flyby. Do you know what I mean?
I totally agree. I think that I started making albums and releasing them at such a young age that I didn't think that that I would be kind of held accountable for them in some ways. Like, you know, Spotify didn't even exist when I put out my first record. So
Yeah.
it's been kind of weird that these records that you used to have to really dig to find are just right up there on my discography now with all the rest of my newer stuff. But I definitely started out, I think, kind of full-fledged weirdo. I mean, I didn't want to be thought of as a normal singer-songwriter because
Right.
I was in art school and I hadn't really grown up yet and I didn't want to be like coffee shop girl, you know.
Which I know exactly what you're talking about because I've played with Coffee Shop Girl a lot, you know. So
Yeah. And then but as I got older, I kind of like have realized, you know, that there's the strength of music really lies within being able to reach a lot of people. So I've there's very little shtick left in my writing. I'm really trying to write songs that everybody can relate to.
So one of the things that I was so drawn to, you know, especially like in you know, going through your discography was, to me, it felt like it kind of started with July, in my opinion, where I felt like, you know, with songs like Drive and, you know, Dead City Emily, where I was like, okay, it feels like she's really kind of got a grasp on something here. And to me, that's where it felt like there seemed to be this growth and like kind of like you said, kind of like a formulaic growth, you know. And then going into the next album, obviously Strangers was a growth on that, but I'm just completely just taken back by how much I loved For My Crimes, because I was expecting to like it like I liked the other ones, but like I really loved this record. Do you know what I mean?
Good. Thank you. I'm glad to hear it. You know, there are a lot of changes in my approach to songwriting on this record, actually, like conscious ones and conscious production changes that one of the biggest ones is like a significant reduction in the amount of vocal reverb that I was using. And that's, I think, something that really kind of changes how they reach people emotionally. Yeah, and I used different producers for this record that were more on the songwriting end of the production spectrum than they were sonic. Like, so they would just basically be giving me good feedback about songwriting, not writing the songs, but saying, oh yeah, that bridge is really strong, you should keep it in there, kind of.
Yeah, I could see that, because it really helps sometimes to have an outside source, like you said, not really putting their hands in the pot, but maybe helping to kind of stir a little bit, like to say, oh, you know what, maybe you should try this, or maybe you should keep that, don't throw that away. You know what I mean? Because I know for us as songwriters, it's very easy for us to discount something and say, oh, that's not any good, when someone else might be like, that's fucking great. You should keep that.
I know.
You know?
The danger is making sure that like the people that you do trust to be those listeners really know what they're talking about. Like for young listeners out there, I think your biggest listener should always be yourself, because I've gone through phases with managers and things like that where they've been like the Wizard of Oz between me and the rest of the world. And like you definitely need to just get to a point where you realize which songs are good on your own, because so many people have such different taste that I've thrown away some good songs based on like one person's opinion and regretted it.
Yeah, and that kind of segues into my next question. Was kind of building on what you were just talking about. Was so where you're at now. I mean, you're talking 14 years collectively under your belt of releasing music. I mean, we've got 8 releases, 8 self-releases, 3 EPs. Like, what has Marissa Nadler learned going into For My Crimes the most that you wish you would have learned, say, going into Sisters or whatever, you know?
I mean, for me, over the years, I've really learned that I'm kind of a believer in the strength of the song as opposed to all other elements on a record. So it kind of this dialogue between like what makes my songs either good or bad or stronger than the other songs I have kind of came from the success of this demo, Leave the Light On, that kind of got a ton of listens on Spotify, and everybody was really perplexed because it was a home recording on a laptop, internal microphone, and a demo, and everybody on my labels were like scratching their head. It was a song that the producers had looked over, and I always really liked it. And what I learned was just like, okay, if a song is really good, you don't have to put a lot of money into it. You don't have to spend your entire record label advance on a producer. You don't need to buy fancy gear. Like, you just need to sit and work on the songs. 'Cause like anything sounds cool with atmosphere, but I think a song isn't much of a song if you strip it away and it can't stand on its own in its barest form. So I'm a real like craftsman that way, just in terms of like, I want to be able to play the songs solo if I have to and have them be just as good.
See, I love that because a couple years ago, I did an acoustic EP of all heavy metal covers because I was doing this. I kind of did it as an experiment to kind of touch on what you were just talking about, where I took some of my favorite heavy metal songs and I just stripped them to the core. And I just played them on acoustic guitar and vocals. And one of the things I was trying to get across was exactly what you said, is that no matter how many layers of instruments or how much polish or how much, spackle or whatever you throw on top of a song, that if you can't strip it down to the studs and it stands up on its own, then it's not really a good song.
Yeah. And I'm like... So that was, I'm on the same page as you about that, basically. That's been the biggest change, is I think early in my career, I was kind of like really focusing on atmosphere. And I think part of like my success in growing instead of weakening as a songwriter over all these years has to do with a lack of huge success the whole time. Like, I think once you get really successful at something, you tend to get lazy. And so
which is very true.
Yeah. So partly I'm kind of grateful for having been having mostly a cult following for quite a while. It's changing now, and things are getting better. More people are at the shows and stuff and getting radio play. But at my core, all those years of playing dive bars really made me a better musician.
Yeah, because I mean, you went from playing dive bars and coffee houses to touring with Ghost, and like of all bands, you even toured with Paul Bearer or did some shows with them. I think. Am I
they're
correct?
friends of mine. Yeah. I have that big metal crossover just because of some of these collaborations that I've done, and I think all the darkness and the lyrical content of my music. But Ghost was definitely the biggest crowds I've ever played for on that tour.
And how was that? Because I mean, I know you've talked about it before, but I mean, I'd like to hear it just straight from you myself. Like, because I mean, as a singer-songwriter, like I said, I have a band right now, and we just played our biggest show to date, opening up for Amigo the Devil recently, and I was just like about to lose control of myself, you know what I mean? Because I was like, that is so many people out there. I've never seen that many people in a room when I walked out on a stage. So I can't even imagine the magnitude of you walking out onto a stage in that size of rooms. Like what did you do or what was your secret to gaining control? Because what I heard from people that saw you on some of those Ghost shows was that you owned the stage when you were out there.
Well, it took a lot of work to get there, I think. I mean, when I was first announced on that tour, I got a lot of hate mail from people.
Of course you did.
I saw a lot of really mean things about me on the internet. Like, can I swear on this podcast?
You can do whatever the fuck you want. I'm going to swear right now because it's mine. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, well, they're good. There are these, there's actually weirdly a lot of women, which made me very sad because I'm like a very, like a feminist and a really like somebody that's really paid her dues, you know, and I was just like, why am I getting attacked by these people that don't even know me? And most of the feedback was like, who is this bitch? Like, isn't she a fucking indie singer? Like, why did Papa pick her? Like, it was just like great, crazy stuff. And so I was terrified to stand up on their stage. I thought I was going to get like stuff thrown at me, and I did get heckled a bit. And that was a tour where I started to use in-ear monitors, which really helped, basically. So you can't hear anybody saying anything to you, and you're just kind of in your own world. And I had a great guitar player with me named Milky Burgess, and we played as a duo, and I kind of just handpicked my gothiest songs, which was not hard to do because there's a lot of them, and kind of threw in the Danzig cover and the Black Sabbath cover, but it was a hard tour, and the tour that really officially got me over my stage fright once and for all. So thank you, Ghost.
I remember I read something where or I watched it on a previous interview of yours, because I watched some interviews that you've done previously just to try to get an idea of you know how you are in an interview setting. And one of the things that struck me the most, and of course I'm not going to say this verbatim because I can't remember the exact way you said it, but you said something about like, don't let yourself think that things are impossible. Just go out and do it, and then by doing it, it's going to make you strong. You know, and I thought that was such an incredibly inspiring thing, because I read that before heard that interview before my band's show on Saturday night. And I actually took that with me, and I thought to myself, you know what? I deserve to be here. I've worked hard, and no matter what anyone says, like, I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to play my best, and I'm going to play my hardest, and my band is going to do our best. And we ended up doing well. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to thank Marissa for that little.
That makes me really happy. Yeah. There is a lot of that personal cheerleading that you have to do, I think, when you're, I mean, at the end of the day, like, nobody gives a shit. And Like if you can't do a good job for yourself, there's really like there's no reason. It's I mean, I definitely have to sometimes give myself a pep talk, like really pre-game, get the energy up, because people, I think, I don't know what it's like to be in like a metal band. I'm sure it's a lot more fun than being like a solo woman musician. Cause
Yeah, I haven't been in a metal band since '94, so I've been playing
Okay,
I've been
so
playing
yeah, what
roots
kind
rock,
of?
and it's the same
Oh,
thing,
cool.
So it's
What's the name of your band?
Collins Drive.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna
Yeah,
check it out.
yeah, but I'm like you. Like I did the solo thing for so many years, and I was just like, people don't know what it's like or how hard it is to walk into a room, like lugging a PA and then setting it up and then sitting in the corner and playing these songs that you wrote while people talk and drink cappuccinos and stuff. And I'm like, will somebody listen?
Oh yeah, I
So,
mean, the thing is, there's going to be talkers even when you get up. Like I recently did an opening slot for a band that one would think would share a demographic with me, and it was in my own hometown or my own state, and I
mhm.
got brutally talked through to the point where I was in. This was only like a month ago, like in tears by the end, and it was just
Oh.
because, oh, it wasn't my crowd, but it there are obstacles throughout, and kind of just like have to have a long term. You have to look ahead sometimes.
Being a solo artist is like one of the most and I've said this to so many people is that, since I've had this, I've had this band for about 5 years now, and I still go out and do solo shows every now and then, mainly just because that's where I get my inspiration, just being in a car by myself, traveling to a show, playing to 5 people, meeting new people or whatever. But I always tell folks, I said, you think it's brutal out there? I said, you try being one person with a guitar and a mic and, in front of an audience that does not want to see you. That's
Yeah.
brutal,
It is brutal. I mean, this is kind of why, like, and it's funny, you really can't win. Like, I've taken that to heart and then put together full bands for tours, and then all I hear is, "Oh, I like you so much better solo." And then when I play solo, people are like, "I really miss the cello" or something, and you're just like, "God, leave me the fuck alone." Like, uh, so you get a lot of unsolicited advice
It's
from
funny because when I
people.
put out my little metal EP of folk songs, like I had so many people message me and go, "Hey, when are you ever gonna do that live?" And I'm like, you know what? I played solo for years and nobody came, so no, I'm not. Like
Yeah,
when I'm ready, I'll let you know. But it's like
exactly.
and now I have a band, and like you try to get people to come see your band, and then they're like, "Oh, but it's too loud," and I'm like, "Okay, I can't win," So.
Yeah, it is very hard to win.
Well, so one of the things I always thought was interesting that I learned about you is that you grew up. I mean, you grew up a Courtney Love fan. You were a big Courtney Love fan. You were very inspired by grunge.
Yeah.
I really do feel that some of that comes through in some of your songs, especially on songs like "Dead City Emily," which I always thought could have been I don't know. For some reason in my mind, whenever I heard that song, I was like, that could have been an Alice in Chains song. You know what I mean? Like, I just thought that was such a strong, powerful song. How much of that has kind of bled into your psyche when it comes to writing, or have you kind of left that behind as more of a past influence?
I think it's like influences in general are always there. Like I don't really consciously emulate anything or anybody when I'm writing, but like I really think as a human, like everything you experience from and anything you've ever been into kind of gets into your writing songwriting DNA. Like, and so I when I write a song, I think it's just all there at the same time. But I'm still like I'd say I'm still just as much influenced by that stuff as I am like Leonard Cohen or something. Even in the newest record, like Blue Vapor, is a pretty grungy song. And
Mm-hmm.
speaking of Hole, has the drummer from Hole on that song, Patty Schemmel, which was pretty cool.
That is awesome. I did not pay attention to that. I should have done
Yeah.
more homework.
No, it's okay. Yeah. So, and then there's Kristen from Dum Dum Girls that sings the harmony on that
Yes,
song.
yes, that I did know. Yes, yes, that's all. I mean, that must have been cool for you though to have like pieces of like, wow, this is like some of my heroes working with me.
Exactly. I had definitely tried to play it cool, but I was really excited about Patty and everything.
That is amazing because when you get to that status where you do get to work with people that you really admire, trying to keep your cool, I can imagine. I did a duet with Caitlin Carey on our last album. That was she was a member of Whiskey Town, who's one of my favorite records.
Know.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
I mean, I for the better part of a week, I couldn't sleep. Because I was so ecstatic and like, but at the same time, it's kind of like you said, like you have to step away from it after a while and go, okay, yeah, this was cool, but I've got a job to do. I got to keep going. I can't get hung up on this,
Yeah, totally.
So,
I actually know Phil Wandisher, who was the original other guitar player in Whiskey Town.
yes.
And he plays with Jesse Sykes in The Sweet Hereafter now, who, if you haven't heard her and you like me, you probably love her too. But yeah, I used to listen to that band a lot.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh God, we could probably do like a 40-minute podcast on Whiskey Town, I'm sure, because that was like, they were one of my favorites, just listen, Whiskey Town, Driving and Crying, bands like that is, kind of where I kind of formulated my whole later years as a songwriter, but so where did the metal interest come in? Because, you talked about, you did the Danzig, we know you've done the Danzig cover. You've done an amazing cover of Solitude by Black Sabbath.
Thank you.
What brought that on? Was metal something that was new to you, or was it something that you kind of, that was always a part of you that you were like, I'm going to do this in the Nadler style?
I am trying to think. It all kind of happened. My first record's called Ballads of Living and Dying. So
Correct.
I always had like a lot of goths into my music, and I'm a very kind of gothy. So, I didn't wear black for 10 years. I mean, didn't wear any colors but black for a long time. But I think the first like real crossover thing I did was the Zaster record, which was in '06, I think, he's a black metal, one-man black metal band, and he like kind of loves finger picking and really got crazy about my music and asked me to sing on that record, Portal of Sorrow. And from there, I just kept getting kind of grouped in, although I didn't really listen to metal growing up. Like, to be honest, I was not like a metalhead in high school or anything, but I mean, I don't really consider Black Sabbath metal, so I kind of think of them as a classic rock band, which might be controversial, but so like, and then Danzig too, like the genres in general are kind of blurry for me, because I could make the argument that Danzig's like a pretty traditional songwriter at heart, like just basically will cover anything I really like. But I like metalheads because they're like more outsidery. Usually, like the Ghost fans were so nice, and it kind of reminded me of like what I was like in high school, kind of, because it's a young fan base.
It's funny. I grew up as a metalhead in the 80s and in the 90s, and I remember my parents always kind of defending me and my friends to other people, by saying like, these metal kids, they're very open-minded, and they're very, for the most part, well spoken, and like, they're very into literature and reading, and they're not just burnouts like you think they are, and in my experience, especially as a writer, working in the hard rock and metal scene, I've seen a lot of that, where there is a lot of versatility. I've met a lot of people like myself who, you'll see them at a Guar show, and then 2 nights later they were going to see, Tom Petty, or they were going to, you know what I mean? Like, there's just like, if, like, to me, there was never any such thing as a guilty pleasure. Everything is a pleasure if you like it. You shouldn't feel guilty about anything.
I know. I'm kind of glad, like, the era of music blogs, like, having all the influences over, because I think people are starting to make up their own minds again about what's cool and what isn't, based on just what they like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, because really the whole concept behind the blog, and even like my podcast, was like, I actually started the podcast because I used to do so many interviews for my blog that people said, I would love to hear your conversations with these people and hear how you connect with them. And, oh, I don't really believe that you connected with so-and-so on the level that you did. I think you might have fudged that a little bit. You know what I mean? And I was like, well, I'm not a journalist though. I'm a music fan and I'm a musician. And so I'm going to talk to them like a musician and a music fan, not as like an uber freak fan, you know what I mean? But at the same time, not as a like, so Marissa, tell me, why did you start playing guitar? Do you know what I mean? Like, things like God. That, like,
yeah.
which is funny because it kind of leads me into what I was going to talk to you about. Was like in watching some of the interviews that you did, I have to say I was a little nervous because I was like, this poor woman does not look like she's having a good time.
Oh no! On which interview?
No, well, it was one of them that was like, it was like a little awkward. It was like it was actually, I think you were having a good time, but I think it was just like that. It was like with a little kid in New York, and I was just like, for some reason, I was just like, I can tell that she's kind of like holding back a little bit, or that she's like, I don't really know what to say to this. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Although the kid had some awesome questions, I had to say,
Yeah, he's a cool kid. It was adjusting to, being asked questions by somebody that young, being delicate. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you are also, yourself a very kind of, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but there's a lot of mystique around you, in my opinion. You seem to be a very, calm person, and, maybe even slightly, maybe have some introverted tendencies or whatever.
I'm like not just some introverted tendencies. I'm 100% an introvert, and it is interesting because I think a lot of musicians are introverts.
Oh yeah,
or a combination of introvert extrovert, but like it makes it hard to do the super performance aspects part of the job, because songwriting is for me the most important thing. But then I have to like dress up and give good face or whatever. I mean, I hate to say it, but
and present yourself and like go out and sing well and not, forget lyrics, and then on top of that, you have to meet fans. Like, I don't really have that problem, but is it hard for you to like meet your fans and whatnot? I mean,
no, I love meeting. I mean, case by case basis. Mm-hmm. Almost everybody I meet is amazing, and every once in a while you get like somebody will say something that's a little bit creepy. I
can't even imagine. Seriously.
Just being like such a confessional songwriter, I think sometimes I get a lot of like heavy stuff said to me, like your music, like right at the merch table when I'm kind of trying to sell a record, it'll be like all of a sudden we're talking about suicide, and I think that's just because of the dark nature of my music. And
right. I can imagine, because especially when you play, I mean, because your music is pretty intense, but like I said, in a sense that, like, for me as a music lover and as a fan of lyrics and stories, I can see how it can attract a certain kind of conversation that you may want to be like, I don't really want to have this conversation with you right now, because that's a song that I wrote, and like, kind of take it for what it is, but
Yeah. I'm too polite too, so I get myself in like trouble. I have a really hard time walking away from conversations. So
see, so do I. You're talking about how all musicians are kind of like, socially awkward, and so, like, my therapist actually told me I was what he calls a selective extrovert, and I was like, what the hell is that? And he was like, you don't mind being around people, but it's people of your choosing. That
sounds familiar.
Like I don't mind going to dinner with like 3 or 4 friends and hanging out and totally dorking out with music. But if a 5th guy shows up that I don't know, I completely shut the fuck down. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, who is this person and why did they infiltrate my circle?
Sounds very familiar. Yeah.
So like, when we had all these people coming up to us Saturday night, I literally, after our show, I looked at my bass player and I was like, can you just man the merch table so I can just go breathe for about 10 minutes? Like, it was so much. And I was like, I can't even imagine how that must feel for you on, like I said, like on such a grander scale,
Mm-hmm.
Well, so one of the things I loved about, I wanted to ask you about on the new album was they're kind like almost like right off the bat, you open up with pretty much a murder ballad, which I absolutely loved, which was, the title track. And then you kind of go into this kind of theme of Lost, where you had, I can't listen to Gene Clark without you anymore. And then Are you really going to move? Are you really going to move to the South? When you're writing like that, is it thematically writing from like a storytelling thing, or are you digging kind of personal, or is it one kind of both?
It's both.
Okay.
Like, I think a lot of this particular record, I think a lot of people got wrong in the press cycle, like just in terms of assuming that I was writing from the first person narrative if I use the word I. And I think that's just a naive assumption to make for a writer. Because, for instance, for my crimes, while I'm speaking in first person, it isn't really necessarily about me. I kind of intended it to be more like an every man or every woman's narrator. But on songs like "Are You Really Gonna Move to the South" and Gene Clark, like, they're undeniably personal. Like, there's no other way to spin it. Though I will say I use a lot of liberties in songwriting. I mean, if a word sounds good, I'm going to use it over one that makes more sense, because I'll always pick music over, you know what I mean, wordiness, I guess.
Right, because there's also this way as being a songwriter, of being able to take a song and say that it's like a story, but then injecting part of yourself into that story so that it might not all be about you, but you don't necessarily have to disclose how much of it is about you and how much of it isn't, Yeah.
Like, initially when they were writing the bio for this record, I wanted it to have like nothing about my personal life whatsoever, and
so much for that.
Well, I have a new manager now, so I got mad because I spent all this time working on these songs that were, really intended to be universal songs in the way that like a country songs like that Willie Nelson writes or whatever. I mean, that was like kind of the world of songwriting that I was pulling from, was that like melodramatic, these like, I can't listen to this anymore. And that's the chorus. And I really didn't intend for it to come across like a full first person confessional, like, woe is me thing. And I think that that happens when music writers are not getting paid a lot and like listen to your record for 3 seconds, even though you've spent years of your life on it. And they read the bio and regurgitate the bio. I mean, this isn't all music writers. Like, for every shitty one, there's a good one. But like, unfortunately, there's no vetting process. Like, I don't know what like school of journalism a lot of these writers are going to these days. But like, the lack of knowledge about music history even is kind of astounding sometimes. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, I hope you'll like my review of the album when it comes out.
I'm sure I will. I mean, it's normally just like a little bit perplexing when people really get it wrong, and I'm like, did you even fucking listen to this? And I mean, that's my other real lesson I've learned is like, you really cannot give a shit what people think, because it is a losing battle, especially when, even if you're making good songs, people will start to grade you on a curve of what you've done before. So it's like consistency is considered a bad thing in the arts, which I'm just newly discovering.
It's
like,
it's
if people can't find something bad to say, they're just like, well, this is stylistically similar. And I don't know if people ever said that to like Elliott Smith. I wonder if it's a criticism that more often than not women get.
Which is so funny, because that's why I was like, when I was telling you about it, is that like, like to me, when I was listening to your material, is that like, while there's a formulaic process, but I can hear the group, but that also might be because I'm a songwriter. Do you know what I mean? So I listen with more of a judgmental ear, and like not so much like a oh, it all sounds the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think that on the surface, like if you write a lot of down tempo songs, and you're not really, I mean, I just, it's weird. It's like, I don't know why having a style is considered a bad thing. But
yeah, I never figured that out either. Like, I remember I used to argue with people all the time that said, oh man, AC/DC's made the same album like 20 times. I'm like, that is so not true. I said, because Highway to Hell, I said, Flick of the Switch is nowhere nearly as good as Highway to Hell. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like, it may sound the same to you, but you listen to every AC/DC album in sequential order and you'll sing a totally different story when you're listening, and not just passing judgment based on like, oh, it sonically sounds the same, or it sonically sounds similar to the other thing, because they're not. They're all different.
That's why I was like a little like, this record for me sounds entirely different than any of my other records.
Completely.
Especially sonically. And so I was just like, what the fuck? Like,
what are you not getting?
Some of the reviews, like, how hard is it to A/B this shit on Spotify and see that there are massive differences? But, I only spent a couple hours getting worked up about that. And then I was back to work, because I don't make music for music reviewers. I make it for people and for myself. And it took me a long time to get to that place, but where I really, truly could give a fuck. But yeah.
And it's probably even harder when you didn't set out to do it on this level in the first place, and then you get there, and then like you said, it's probably even harder to eventually stop giving a fuck, because you're like, I didn't give a fuck when I started. Why should I now? You're making me. Like,
yeah, I'm of the camp that, I mean, I've taught art. I went to art school. Like, I'm kind of just very pro expression. I know that sounds cheesy, because I'm kind of an art teacher and at times in my adult life. So I don't ever understand the point of releasing negative things into the, like, negative energy, like snobby reviews. Like, I think it's at least for American artists, and some other, obviously there's countries that have it a lot worse. But there's also countries that have it a lot better in terms of support from the government, or like feeling like the arts are supported. So like,
Sweden.
It is really, Yeah, like seriously.
I have
And,
so many Swedish friends who are in bands, that are just like, oh yeah, they pretty much pay for our rehearsal space and stuff. And I'm just like, wow, that's awesome. Like,
yeah, you definitely don't get that with being an American musician. So it is. I'm always just like, well, I think the artists can use all the help they can get. It's not a bad way to be alive.
no.
Your whole purpose is to kind of release beauty into the world. Though I think that like it's questionable. That's why sometimes I've like been like, all right, I'm gonna teach kids for a while, or you get jaded sometimes. I do at least, like a worthwhileness. So. When you're playing enough dive bars.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing is that, like to switch it up from time to time, to kind of, like you said, to maybe change your, trajectory a little bit sometimes can kind of almost re-humble you a little bit and kind of rekindle a flame for that artistic side that you might feel like got snuffed out a little bit, whether it was like because you got burned out or, I mean, it's why I'm a writer, I'm a musician, but I'm also a writer. And so when I feel like my music is kind of burned me out or kind of weighed heavy on me, I can turn to my writing. But then when I'm writing for a while, then all of a sudden I miss the music, and it kind of takes me back, I have
the same kind of problem with being a fine artist, kind of just. I had some jerk on Instagram, right? Like, you paint very well, you sing very well, maybe you should pick one. And I was just like, and I blocked him, and then I get like, and I block people like immediately if they write something like that. I just didn't even want to get involved in making an argument why that was kind of an offensive statement. And
there is nothing wrong with that, because you know what? Even on my level, I do that shit too. Like it's like I have enough time obsessing over whether or not I accidentally threw one of my wife's shirts in the dryer and when it should have been hung up. Like, I don't have the time to argue with somebody about stupid shit. Like, I'll debate and I will have a conversation with you, but if you're just going to come back at me and be like, "Oh, you're some fat dude that lives in your mom's basement, you don't know what you're talking about," I'm just going to block you and be like, "Yeah, forget it. I'm done."
Immediately blocked. Yes. I have a long block list.
Yes.
I just think people think they can say whatever they want to certain people because it's there's not a lot of boundaries between the artists and the audience these days. So that's a good thing and a bad thing.
It really can be. I remember I interviewed the bass player for Skid Row many years ago. One of the things we were talking about was social media, and one of the things he said that he loved the aspect of having this direct connection to fans, but now there's no more mystique between the fan and the artist. Like it's almost like you get to, if you choose to do a social media route, then there's no mystique to you anymore. You're just, you're opening yourself to like people talking to you just like they've known you for 30 years. And you're like, I don't really want to talk to all these people,
Yeah,
but
like I'm an introvert, so I just get really drained by social media a lot of the time, and it's really part of the job these days. Like, nobody else knows about your shows if you don't post about them, so every job has its shitty things. For me, that luckily Instagram's fun because I'm a visual person, so that's easier for me than Twitter.
Oh yeah. I got rid of because to me Twitter was exactly like what I was saying. It was like talking to a group of people I did not want to talk to, so I linked my Facebook page to the Twitter page so that it just updates on its own, and I never even go on Twitter. I can't handle it. It's just too much. Like Instagram, I love because, like you said, I'm a visual creature myself. Like I love looking at visuals and people's live shots and people's art and people's kids with cake smeared all over their faces or whatever, like that's fine, but I'd rather do that. But, Well, so just to wrap things up, one of the things I wanted to ask you about that I've always wanted to ask all my musician friends when I talk to them, that for some reason you're the first one I'm going to ask this to, because I heard an interview one time, and these guys it was a podcast, and these guys were talking back and forth about Pink Floyd, and they're like, what do you imagine? You know, like, do you think David Gilmour ever sits around and imagines what people are doing while they're listening to Dark Side of the Moon, like besides getting high? Like, do you ever try to imagine in your mind like what your fans might be doing while they're listening to your music?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people write me and tell me, so it takes the imagination out of it. But funny enough, a lot of people find my music very relaxing. It's just like, I'm not a very relaxed person, but that's kind of, I think, why I make that kind of music is I need the medicine too. It kind of soothes me to write these down-tempo things. So some people write like, oh, I listen to you at night while I'm painting or on a long car ride and stuff like that. I like it though. Like those letters. Sorry, I hope I haven't been making too much noise in the background.
No, you're totally fine.
Now I'm making some I wasn't making the candles. I was just like doing some OCD hot glue gunning of the wick into the metal tin.
I will be honest, I love it because to me, because this is what I want like my podcast to be, is I want it to be a like if you were talking on the phone with a friend, you would probably be doing this too, you know?
Yeah.
I did an interview with this one guy and I can't remember who it was, but he was noodling on his guitar the whole time. Yeah. And I was just like, are you playing your guitar? And he started laughing and he's like, every time I'm on the fucking phone, I play my guitar just because like I'm so, ADD. I have to constantly have something going on with my, I have my earphones
Super
in.
ADD,
I know,
yeah.
So am I. Like if I'm on the phone with a friend, he's like, are you cleaning your house again? And I'm like, yes, So it's like, I totally get it,
We are in the era of multitasking, that's for sure.
It's great for us ADD people though, I tell you. Cell phones and like the headphones, and we don't have to have our hands on anything. It's like I can get my whole house clean in a 45-minute phone conversation. So
exactly. But I think people are more relaxed when they're not like having the idle hands.
Oh, I think that's very artistic thing too. Because actually, the funny thing was you were talking about. What people say. So like, you are my journaling music like that. Whenever I'm journaling in the evenings, that's what I'm listening to. And I told my wife this morning before she went out of town to be with her folks, I said, oh, I'm interviewing Marissa Nadler today. And she goes, now who's that? And I was like, she was like, oh, the journaling girl, she remembered you just because like whenever I'm journaling at night, that's what I'm listening to,
Oh, well, that's really sweet. So that makes me happy.
Well,
the
cool.
Journaling girl.
You are. Hey, that could be a song title though, you can have it. You can have it.
Thank you.
Well, I guess to close out, I'm going to ask you the obvious. Like, what are your touring plans? I know you've got some dates posted. You've got some more coming up, but the album's still pretty new. So I'm kind of hoping that we'll see some more extensive dates. Going into next year.
Where are you located again?
I'm in Atlanta.
Oh yeah, I mean, I want to come back to Atlanta. Last time I played Atlanta, it was a rough turnout for some reason.
Where were you at? Do you remember?
I was at it was the Earl, I think.
Oh, at the Earl, okay.
I don't know why there was nobody there, but I am going to come back. Like, there's definitely plans to come do more touring all throughout the year. It's just kind of like I do better with little spurts because the long tours are just brutal. So.
Yeah. Because matter of fact, I remember when I first messaged you on Instagram, I said, please come to Atlanta. And you were like, I was just there. And I was like, shit, I missed it. Now I'm going to have to wait.
There. I think there was like 3 people at that show.
Oh, see, and I would have loved to have been 4, but like, it was just so funny because you were just like, I was just there. And I was like, oh great. I'm going to wait like a year and a half.
Maybe longer because it was such a rough one. But yeah, no, I'll let you know when I do come to those parts.
Well, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today. I appreciate it. And congratulations on an incredible record. And thank you for opening yourself up to talk with me and for just for giving me some incredible music as a fan. I love everything you do.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. And it's nice to meet you finally on the phone.
Yes, same here. Same here. So, well, you take care and have a great holiday.
Thank you. You too.
Chi-town in the winter. Then we saw